Don, you're way in the back. Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me. I need to. How's that? Can you hear me now? Now that's okay. Dawn, I'm looking at you to see if you can hear me. Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to the 2024 Annual Society Meeting for the Whitensville Christian School. I'm thankful for your participation tonight. You guys are what make this place the society and make WCS the special place that it is. And with that, I'm looking around the room and I've looked at my list. We will declare this meeting in session and a quorum achieved. Melissa Vandervaan, who is an outgoing trustee, will be doing the devotions and prayer to start us off tonight.
I actually typed this on really big print, thinking I could read it without my glasses. I can't see it. So. All right. When Erica asked me to lead devotions tonight, I wanted to share something that would be meaningful and relatable and maybe tie in a few things to my time as a trustee. I had no intention of sharing my own thoughts and was much more comfortable finding someone else's words. My plan was to keep an eye out over the next few weeks for something that seemed appropriate. As time passed, nothing was really inspiring me, but deep hope kept popping in my mind. I know many of you are familiar with those words, but until now, I had never given much thought about what the word hope meant or even deep hope. Over the next week, I started to notice how often the word hope was being used by myself and others around me. I hope it's not going to rain again tomorrow. I hope you have a quick recovery from your surgery. I hope this delay doesn't set us back on our deadline. I hope I don't get stuck in traffic. I hope I can find something meaningful to share at the society meeting. I was surprised at how often the word hope was being used in everyday conversations, as well as my own random thoughts, now that I was paying more attention to it. I was pretty confident that I knew the meaning of the word hope, and it was very likely it was one of my vocabulary words that I had to learn during my elementary years here at WCS. But since I wanted to know more about deep hope, I thought I should probably start with confirming the definition of just the word hope. It seemed like Googling a dictionary definition would be a good place to start. I found that the word hope can be a noun or a verb, and is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as a feeling of expectation and a desire for certain things to happen, and to want something to happen or be the case. Thinking back to the occasions when I was hearing the word hope used, the comments were meant to offer encouragement with an expectation that the outcome of the situation was something good would happen either in that moment or in the not too distant future. As I was driving to work the next morning, I started to recall a few of the many verses in the Bible that speak about hope. Psalm 31 verse 24 says, "Be strong and take heart, all you who hope in the Lord." Isaiah 40 verse 31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint." And Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for good and not evil, to give you a future and a hope." I knew there were many more verses throughout the Bible that spoke about hope, but these were the ones that I had marked for times when I needed God's strength and encouragement, and I had an expectation or a desire for a positive outcome in whatever situation I was in at that time. I recalled an article that I came across which referred to hope as the confidence of what God had promised for the future and its strength in His faithfulness. It was more than just a gesture of optimism or a wish for something good to happen. It's the expectation in what we believe God has promised for our lives and a promise for eternal life. After poking around the internet to understand more about the meaning of hope, I thought this might be a good time for me to be more intentional about finding an inspirational devotion. Maybe I should stick with the topic of hope since I couldn't seem to shape the word from my thoughts. But I still wasn't finding anything that ignited me, so that's when I decided to share my own journey in finding more about deep hope. As I started to pull this together, I had to remind myself that I'm not studying theology or writing a paper on the meaning of hope. This was only a 5 to 10 minute devotion. The danger of searching for things on the internet is that you can spend hours and hours reading about something, and I needed to get to my point. My next search had to be the meaning of deep hope. What I really wanted was a clear definition, like I had to learn back in elementary school. and I was expecting my search to be returned with a straightforward dictionary definition and possibly references to deep hope throughout the Bible. However, what I got in return was several results related to teaching for transformation. I was pleasantly surprised, since I could make this connection. I first heard of deep hope a few years ago when WCS was starting to adopt the TFT framework. I looked on their website and it states, deep hope represents why you, as teachers, follow the call to be a teacher in a Christian school. It aligns with the desires that parents have as they enroll their children in your school. It reflects the promises contained within your school's mission and vision statement and points towards your place in God's story. Looking back at what I was reading about hope and its spiritual meaning, deep hope wasn't just about the expectation and assurance of God's promises for our lives. It was taking those expectations to another level and living the story. My interpretation was that it's a teacher's desire to engage and teach their students in a way that helps them experience how what they are learning about is part of God's bigger story, and the expectation or hope that the students will continue living and sharing what they've learned beyond their time at WCS. But is deep hope only something for teachers who are adopting this framework and teaching their students in this way, or for parents who want their children to experience God in their learning in order to prepare them for living out God's plan for them beyond the walls of WCS? Isn't that my purpose of being a trustee for the last 6 years? Was it my reason for serving as a trustee because I believe that the education and experiences that students received here are part of God's plan to prepare him for life in his kingdom? No matter what our relationship is to WCS, all of us here tonight have an expectation that is greater than a passing gesture or a wish for the future of WCS to be around for a long time. We believe in the mission of WCS to nurture the academic, spiritual, personal, social, creative, and physical development of students for Christ-like service in God's world. With the end of my time as a trustee approaching, I've looked back at the many ways that God has blessed WCS over the last 6 years, and I hope that God continues to bless WCS for many years in the future. After I wrote that, I had to stop and think about what I actually meant. It's my desire or expectation that God continues to bless WCS with great teachers, faculty, staff, parents, students, and a community of supporters for many years as he has done in the past. But I also have a deep hope that WCS continues to thrive for many years so that it will be a place to nurture and teach students in a way that they can see how everything they are learning fits God's world, and when they leave WCS, they are inspired and ignited to live out God's story. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the hope that you will continue to bless WCS for many years so that it can be a place where students not only experience its mission statement, but they will take what they learn into your world and be part of your story. Guide the teachers, faculty, and staff in their deep hope to teach and nurture our students. Thank you for blessing WCS with a community of supporters who give their time and talents because they also have a deep hope for the future of WCS and all who are connected here. Please bless this time tonight that we have together and guide us as a society to make the right decisions for the continued success of WCS for many years to come. In your name, amen.
Thanks, Melissa. Can you hear me still? First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity and privilege to serve WCS in this capacity. While I still feel inadequate for this role, I'm humbled by the ability to give whatever time, talent, and treasure that God has given me to this school. This year has been one of excitement and transition for WCS. We have welcomed Sarah Bowler into the role of the head of school. Sarah has worn many hats at this school, including parent, teacher, student, alumni, and principal, and we are thrilled that she has accepted this newest role with such enthusiasm and excellence. Sarah brings years of administrative experience to this role, and as well as a deep, deep love for this school. She values and appreciates the culture of this school while also looking ahead onto what is the next horizon for WCS to be on. Speaking of what's next for us, in the fall, the Board of Trustees will be working on our next 5-year strategic plan. We'll be spending time reflecting on what's worked well, the top priorities, thanking God for all of his provision, and looking ahead to the 100th year anniversary and what will be bringing us into that celebration. Of course, WCS wouldn't be here without our staff, which is filling a lot of this room. You guys are the heartbeat of this school. You're the special sauce, the engine, and the reason we are who we are. I could go on and on because you're my favorite part. Our staff are dedicated beyond just teaching in the classroom, but you meet the needs of each student. I see you guys at basketball games, at sporting events, at ski races, outside of school activities, early in the morning before school to help our kids. As trustees, we will never underestimate the imprint that you guys leave on our children. I also would be remiss if I didn't thank our Board of Trustees. These folks give of themselves and their talents in big and small ways. The demands include multiple meetings per month, committee work, and full-time jobs and families. They pray for the school, give of their talents, and to make this place the special institution it is. This year, we're saying goodbye to 3 incredible trustees. Melissa Vandermaan has served for 6 years, and in many capacities and has worn many hats. She most recently has chaired our Committee on Trustees, but she's been on the Education Committee as well. Melissa, if you don't know her, is detail-oriented. She's kind, she's thoughtful. She understands so much of the historical context of this school. She also was very much a mentor to me as I came on as a baby trustee, and she took my hand and walked me through how this all worked. You have given so selflessly, and we're thankful. Jeff Ryan, who is not here tonight, is also leaving after a 6-year term. Jeff blessed us with his creative and clever mind. He sharpens all of us. He pushes back on a way that makes us all think clear and defend our decisions. Jeff makes all of us better, and yet he always has the grace to understand when something doesn't go exactly as it was planned in his mind. So Jeff was probably joining us virtually from some far off country and in Europe, often joining trustee meetings at 2 a.m. so that he could participate. So thank you, Jeff, for your service. And lastly, we're saying goodbye to Brent Barker. Brent has served as our treasurer for 2 years, and before that on the finance committee. Brent has seen us through an incredible amount of transition, and for those of you who don't know Brent, you would not understand his calm presence as an anchor in our storm. God brought Brent to the board for this reason. He served through our first strategic plan, the chaos and all of the uncertainty around COVID and the shutdown, 2 heads of school. Through all of it, Brent is a rock. He doesn't get riled over the small things, but instead trusts God and leads us all through the details of the finances in a way that makes it understandable. Brent, I'm not sure I can find the words to thank you for what you've given to WCS, and you will be missed. So please join me in thanking these trustees as they're moving on to the business of the evening, you'll see the agenda set forth in your packets, and at any point you're able to vote on the link provided. There are 4 motions that need your vote that we'll be walking through this evening. The first is fairly self-explanatory. That is the meeting minutes from last year's meeting in April of 2023. And you can find those meeting minutes if you have any questions in the society report. The second question is a candidate approval for the slate of candidates. More on that after I'm done from Melissa. The third question is a vote on the 2024-2025 school year budget, and Brent will be speaking to that shortly. The last question I wanted to quickly address while I had the mic. This is in regards to bylaw Article 7. The proposed amendment that we're proposing before the society states that the Board of Trustees is required to meet 6 times per fiscal year. Current bylaws call for monthly meetings as part of an operational approach to being a trustee. This change we're putting forth provides the flexibility to adjust our schedule, including the retreat, the demands of the trustees, the commitments, and also the needs of the school. WCS administrative team now has full operational responsibility of the school, and the role of a trustee is taken very seriously, and we want to make this opportunity available and attainable for the most talented, committed people, and also their busy lives. So the committees, if you're familiar with how that works, the committees will continue to meet monthly during the school year. So you can click to oh. Thank you all for joining in person and for our virtual constituency. We appreciate it and we're thankful for your investment in WCS. And Melissa will be leading us with the next slate of candidates.
I promise there's someone else going to come up to this podium besides Erica. It's not just the two of us. As Erica mentioned, one of the responsibilities of the Committee on Trustees is to interview and secure candidates to be nominated tonight to the Board of Trustees. This year we have the 3 outgoing candidates who are Brent, Jeff, and myself. We have all completed a second 3-year term and are not eligible to continue on as trustees. Trevor Tomasino, is Trevor here? Oh, there he is, he's in the back, sorry. Completed his first 3-year term and is our incumbent nominee for tonight. Trevor has served on the building committee prior to becoming a trustee 3 years ago. He has served as the chair of the building committee for the last 2 years, and Trevor and his wife, Alice, have 2 boys who are elementary students at WCS, and they attend Pleasant Street Christian Reformed Church. Our 3 incoming candidates to replace Brent, Jeff, and I are Mike Bell, Terry Eveling, and Dr. Ilka Koska. Mike has volunteered at WCS in several capacities, including the annual pancake breakfast and apple pie fundraiser. He's also facilitated our board retreat last fall. He and his wife Allie are parents to 2 boys who graduated from WCS, and their youngest son is currently a senior and will graduate this spring. They attend Cornerstone Church. Is Mike here? I'm sorry. There he is. Okay. There's a lot of you sitting out there. Terry is a longstanding member of the WCS community. I know Terry's here because I saw her. There she is. All right. She retired last year after teaching at WCS for 23 years. During a break in her 28 years of teaching, Terry served as a member of the Board of Trustees. She and her husband Greg, who is an alum of WCS, have 3 children who have graduated from here, and Terry and Greg attend Fairlawn Christian Reformed Church. Dr. Ilka Koska, which Ilka's right there, has been a member of the WCS community for the last 3 years. She is currently serving on the Education Committee and volunteers at WCS. She and her husband have a daughter who is in the 2nd grade, and they attend St. Patrick's Church. Each of these candidates have been engaging members of the WCS community and are committed to the mission of WCS and have a strong desire to serve as members of the Board of Trustees. Included in the packet of information, as Erica mentioned a few minutes ago, you'll actually see the bio for each of the candidates with a lot more detail than I just shared. You can read more about them, and you can also approve the motion to approve the slate of candidates for the WCS Board of Trustees for their 2024-2027 term at this time, if you've not already. Okay. Now I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Good evening, WCS community. I had big plans to write a very lengthy speech that focused on the myriad of things that our students have been involved in this year. And I didn't want to focus just on students. I also, of course, wanted to focus on our faculty and staff, on our committees, and me as head of school. But it turns out, when I inquired as to the length of this speech, I was not given 30 minutes for this speech, and then it quickly became overwhelming to try to narrow it down and report on all that has been accomplished and is happening here at WCS. So I have narrowed my focus. We had 2 major undertakings this year. First, we successfully completed the reaccreditation process with NEASC, having met all of the standards guaranteeing accreditation for the next 10 years. NEASC shared major commendations and recommendations with us. They commended us for our effective integration of mission, our development of a strong SAS and health and wellness program over the last 10 years, and the outstanding professionalism of our faculty, which enables a dynamic set of programs to be accessible to a broad range of students. We were also commended for providing a program that is so enthusiastically supported and celebrated by parents and our community. So I want to thank you for articulating that support through the surveys and the opportunities that you had to engage with the visiting team itself. The major recommendations include continuing to look at ways to increase compensation for our teachers, forming an alumni council for social and fundraising opportunities, increased focus on enrolling mission-aligned students, and looking at the budgetary impact of our programming. Our second major undertaking is the completion of 3 years of Teaching for Transformation training, TFT, which Melissa alluded to. This final year of training brought all of our faculty together with a common language and framework that helps teachers and students employ a biblical lens to view all subjects as a way to learn more about God and see our part in the redemption story more clearly. It also encourages classes to consider tangible ways that can make their faith meaningful in the real world. Some examples from this year of Flex projects, which focus on real work that meets a real need for real people, have been showcased in the latest edition of the Crusader Chronicle. I used the word completion when referencing TFT, but really, this is just the beginning of continuing to focus on transformational growth for our students. This past week, we hosted a team of 6 educators, 4 members from outside of WCS and 2 of our teachers, as they conducted a TFT site visit. The team spent the day in our classrooms talking to students and teachers, which will lead to a written report highlighting our strengths with TFT and giving recommendations for moving forward. In the debriefing session with the team, the educators felt energized and encouraged at the way our students were able to articulate their understanding of what TFT is all about and the importance of Christian education. A panel of 3rd through 8th grade students shared how they have been excited about the passion they could see in teachers who are communicating their deep hopes for their students, seamlessly connecting their passion for the subject they teach with their faith, which is the heart of what we desire for our school. Our next steps forward with TFT include training of new teachers and putting coaches in place to support our faculty and providing continued time for collaboration with each other, with a future goal of inviting other schools to come in and learn from us. Throughout this year, we have sent out a variety of communications referencing our adoption of TFT, and you will continue to see this language used in the future. While we have been working on these 2 major initiatives, the school as a whole has continued to provide robust programming for our students. We have heard repeatedly from students and parents how thankful they are for the opportunities to be involved in a variety of experiences related to their interests. At WCS, students are not put into one box of athletics, drama, robotics, STEM, or music. Not only do they have a variety of opportunities, but they excel. If you follow our social media or read our weekly newsletters, you have been able to witness music festival awards, athletic PRs, DECA trips, service projects, including hosting a blood drive, along with inductions into National Honor Society and college acceptances. As the new head of school, I have also been focused on realigning our processes and our procedures to our mission. Transparent communication to our faculty and staff has been a priority, along with including them in the decision-making process whenever possible. The close community at WCS continues to set us apart and is noticed by visitors, whether they are touring the building with Miranda as a potential family or spending a week with us as a NEASC visiting team. As you can see in the committee reports, many things have been accomplished over the 2023-2024 school year, reflecting hundreds of volunteer hours by committee members. I want to extend a personal thank you to each person who has volunteered their time and expertise this year. As we look ahead to the 2024 and 2025 school year and beyond, I am excited that we have once again partnered with ISM, Independent School Management, in the fall to create our next 5-year strategic plan. Like Erica mentioned, we are also eagerly anticipating our 100th anniversary in 2028. So I have a vision of a WCS museum, or at least a hallway. And as such, I have become the keeper of all WCS memorabilia for the time being. Celebrating 100 years is monumental, especially for a Christian school in New England, and provides us with an opportunity to reflect on our roots and create a sustaining vision for our future, with an emphasis on giving and growing of our endowment so that we are able to provide an excellent education to all mission-aligned students. I want to thank each of you for partnering with us this year as we strive to nurture our students and equip them for restorative action in God's world. Thank you. You'll see this slide up here. Feel free, if you have any questions, to email them to trustees@whitensvillechristian.org. You can email those now, and then we will be responding to your questions after Brent comes up. So now I will welcome Brent Barker, our treasurer, to speak.
All right, jump into probably what will be a longer discussion, but hopefully informative. So, Steve, if you want to flip the slides for me. I'm going to spend probably more time on this slide and my last slide. I've got about 4 or 5 slides altogether, but that'll give you some context in terms of where we are as we set the budget. And then the last slide, I'll go through some of the details for the 2024-2025 budget. So first off, just in terms of the state of WCS financially, I will say overall, I think WCS is in a great spot from a financial standpoint. We continue to, I think, do very well as a school in that area. I will, echo some of Erica's comments. I think we have an outstanding team and faculty here. They create an excellent environment for our kids, mine included, to learn and grow and mature and develop academically and spiritually here. And I know we kind of get lost in details of numbers of this is going up and that's going down, but I don't want to lose sight of that fact of what we do every day. And fortunately or unfortunately, finances are just part of what we have to think about to be able to do what we do as an institution. Fundraising has been very strong as well for the school, both this year as well as in the past year or so, and we're thankful for all of our donors that continue to support the school. I'm pleased to report this year that we have achieved our operating reserve target that the Board of Trustees set as part of our strategic plan 5 years ago. We've talked about that in the past, but as a reminder, we set a target to have 20% of our annual operating expenses set aside in cash reserves so that we have flexibility to sort of meet the unexpected expense or need if it comes up. One of the big reasons that we were able to achieve that this year is we applied for the employee retention credit as part of the federal stimulus program. We received, kind of at the end of last summer of 2023, about $1.8 million in payroll taxes as well as interest as part of that program. So that one-time money from the federal government, along with, if you go back to the height of the pandemic, we took advantage of the PPP loan program. And when that loan was forgiven, part of those proceeds were able to be earmarked toward our reserves. And between those two one-time sources of funds, we've been able to reach our reserve target, which is a great blessing for the school to be able to do that with one-time outside money, as opposed to trying to fundraise that or generate those types of funds through operations. Okay. I was kind of afraid of that. Try to get it a little bit closer. Is that better? So the board, like Erica and Sarah both said, we're going to be updating our strategic financial plan over the summer and the early fall. So I'm sure that 20% reserve threshold will be looked at. That is a target that was supplied to us during our last strategic financial planning process through ISM. ISM would tell you today that that number needs to be about 30% of operating expenses, and that's kind of a new threshold that they have as a result of looking at the world post-pandemic. That'll be up to the board to evaluate what that threshold looks like, and ultimately what we do with some of those funds that are sitting in reserves now from the retention credit. Just so you know, we have invested that cash, so it's earning interest income for us right now. That's in CDs, and that interest income is helping contribute to the existing results for the current year, and we have interest income incorporated into next year's budget from those funds as well. I would say enrollment is another area that's been quite strong, and it's been certainly been a blessing, but it's also a short-term challenge, and I'll talk a little bit about that. Enrollment's been pretty steady over the last 3 years, but we are, let me back up. We are continuing to see strong interest in the school in terms of new students for next school year. We've got a lot of interest like in our kindergarten program right now, which is great. But as we look ahead to next school year, we are forecasting a decrease in enrollment. So our budget is built upon 629 students for next year. There's probably two sort of general reasons for that that are kind of coming together at the same time. One, we have a very large graduating class this year. We have 54 seniors that will graduate in June, which is fantastic. But in order for our high school enrollment to stay the same, we need 54 incoming freshmen next school year, and we currently don't have that large an 8th grade class. So we're probably 8 to 10 kids higher in terms of a graduating class this year than what we are in a normal average year. The other thing that's happening as we were putting this budget together, we are aware of about 16 or 17 students that are potentially looking at other options for high school that are outside of WCS. So we have been a little bit cautious, conservative, if you will, as we have put together enrollment projections for next school year. So when you kind of factor those two things together, as well as just us looking back at data over the last 3 or 4 years about in terms of how many net new students that we can realistically bring in to the school in a given year, we feel like 629 is the appropriate number for us to build the budget on for next year. We're hopeful when we open the school in the fall that we are above 629. The enrollment team continues to meet with a lot of prospective students. We have also met, the team has met with these 16 or 17 kids that are looking at other options with kind of a twofold purpose there. One is to help them understand what high school at WCS could look like for them in terms of their individual experience here. But we're also trying to learn from that and understand what factors they're considering as they think about other options, just so we can kind of learn and grow from that as an institution. Enrollment, obviously is one of the primary drivers to our budgeting process. So we've talked about, this item before, that if we don't have enrollment growth, it does put a lot of pressure on our expenses, and it does put upward pressure on tuition. And that is just kind of an unfortunate, reality of kind of where we are right now in this cycle. I will say enrollment growth is great, but it has to kind of be in the right places, right? So we get a lot of interest, like I said, in our kindergarten program right now, and that's fabulous. But then we get into like practical reality of space in terms of where would we potentially put, a third classroom of a elementary, lower grades in our physical building. Typically we have two classrooms per grade. Gets a little tricky when we try to figure out logistically where we fit in a third classroom downstairs with a particular grade. It also, you have to factor in the additional cost if we would open up a different classroom to staff that classroom. We need a full-time teacher. Perhaps we need, some additional aides that go, along with that. So We do factor that in as we make our decisions from a budgeting standpoint. We definitely have more flexibility to accommodate new students in middle school and high school. It's I won't say it's easy, but it's easier because students are changing classes, and it's a little bit easier for us to drop in some additional students in those two schools. All right, flip the slide for me. This is our enrollment trend. I've covered most of this. Like I said, we are basing next year's budget on 629 students. We're at 647 students today, and that's where we expect to end the school year. We had a dip in enrollment in 2021 right after the pandemic. Most of that was in our preschool grades, and then we had a big increase in the following 2 to 3 years that have held pretty steady. If you look at the chart, 629 puts us pretty much back on par with where we were in 2019, 2020. We were at 630 students back then. Flip the slide for me. Tuition assistance. So in the current school year that we're in, we have awarded about 400,000 of grants. That is impacting 146 students across 61 families. Next year, we're budgeting to award about 432,000 of tuition assistance awards. Those notifications, I think, have gone out to families at this point. Our tuition assistance from a policy standpoint tries to meet about 50% of the demonstrated need for an applicant. So if a family is interested in tuition assistance, they submit information through fax, which is a independent service that we engage. We as a school get back basically 3 numbers for a family, right? We get the tuition number, we get what the family's ability is to pay based upon their income level, and then we get a third number that's a demonstrated need in terms of additional assistance. And we try to meet about 50% of that demonstrated need through tuition assistance. Our goal as a board has been to try to grow our tuition assistance funding, and we've been able to keep pace with growth and increases in our tuition. So that has been a positive, but at the same time we have not been able to make kind of a quantum step, if you will, and go above 50% and reach a higher percentage threshold in terms of being able to meet more of that demonstrated need, and that continues to be a goal of the board to try to gain ground on that. The other reality of tuition assistance is we do need to raise those funds each and every year. So if that's something you are motivated in terms of your giving, please by all means continue to support that area, because it does help families be able to be here that might otherwise not be able to have their kids at WCS. Next slide. So this is an outline of the 2024-2025 budget recommendation. It is a $9.3 million budget for next school year, and I'll hit the highlights for you on expenses and revenue. On the compensation side, we are recommending an increase for our faculty on the STEP plan, where they will receive the STEP plus a 3% cost of living adjustment. That's about 6% in total in terms of rough math. For other members that are not on the STEP plan, will be a 3% cost of living adjustment. For context, salaries and all the related compensation costs are about 83 to 84% of our budget. So it's by far and away, the majority of what we spend our money on each and every year. When I say related costs, that covers things like health insurance, it's dental insurance, it's our institution, contribution to the retirement plan, payroll taxes, that we cover to fund as a school, all go into that number. In whole dollars, our compensation budget for next year is pretty close to what our compensation is for the current school year. That reflects, that small change, I think really reflects kind of our push as a finance team on the administration. If we're going to ask for a larger than probably average tuition increase, we wanted to be able to say to all of you that we are trying to operate, as efficiently as we can. So that is tuition. I will say, compensation. One other thing in the compensation arena, we have what we affectionately refer to as the old pension plan. So if you've been around for WCS for a while, we were part of a multi-school defined benefit pension plan. That's a mouthful. That plan was closed to new participants about 6 years ago. It was in my first year on the board and the finance committee. Since then, we have set up our own WCS pension plan that is a defined contribution plan. It's just for our school and our team. But for our old plan, we continue as an organization to have to make contributions to that to fund our share of those ongoing pension obligations. So in next year's budget, that number is about $208,000. So that has risen over the years it started out. Looking back at Lee Gaudette, it was probably around 130, 140 back in the first year, and it has grown over time. But that is an obligation that we continue to contribute to each and every year, and probably will continue to contribute to for the foreseeable future. I will say that plan is much better funded now than certainly it was back 6 years ago. And we do, as a finance team, continue to evaluate whether or not we make kind of a lump sum contribution at some point to satisfy our outstanding obligation to that. We get a number every year that we evaluate, and years past it has not been feasible to do that, but if there is one positive of high interest rates right now, it is a lower payoff number, so to speak. So that is something that we are continuing to look at and evaluate as a board. On the revenue side, like I said, this was in the packet, we are recommending a tuition increase of 8% for elementary, middle school, and high school. Our kindergarten tuition will be increasing as well. We have a lower tuition rate for kindergarten than what we do for first grade. And we will still have a lower sort of introductory rate, if you will, for kindergarten. It's just we are going to narrow that difference between those two tuition rates. It costs us the same amount of money to staff and teach a kindergarten classroom as it does a first grade classroom. But like I said, we are trying to narrow that gap. There's a lot of interest in our kindergarten program, even with that. Families that have kindergartners can apply for tuition assistance. And then with this change on the discount for kindergarten tuition, we will allow kindergarten students to be eligible for the multi-student discount. In years past, we have not allowed the multi-student discount because of the already fairly large discount on kindergarten tuition. One other thing that is built into the budget that is not on the slide is we are going to, for next school year, absorb the cost of what I'll call consumables and eliminate what I will call some fees. Not all fees, but some fees. I have a lot of witnesses in the room that I said some fees. So I've said that 3 times, right? Let me try to explain what I mean by that. So consumables, think about the folder or a paperback book. I've experienced this myself as a parent. With my older 2 kids, you pay your tuition, and somewhere along the way in a quarter you get a bill for $5 for a paperback book. We are going to try to eliminate that and build the cost of that $5 paperback book into our budgeted expenses and our revenues as well. It's going to be baked into our tuition number. We feel like that will make things simpler on our team internally, that we don't have to bill 40 kids for the $5 paperback, and we don't have to go chase the 4 or 5 families at the end of the school year that never saw the $5 fee in fax for payment of that, and we hopefully will eliminate some frustration on the parent side of things for the $5 paperback charge or that purple folder that you're trying desperately to find at, Staples, Walmart, or wherever it may be. Fees as well. So on the fee part, if we have something that applies kind of universally to a grade, the thought is we will make an attempt to try to absorb that into next year's budget and tuition. I like to talk in examples. So think about like a middle school retreat where virtually every kid in middle school goes on the middle school retreat. Instead of billing separately for that, it's just embedded into tuition. There are things that we will continue to bill fees for. Again, I'm an example person, but think about an AP class in high school. Not every student in high school grade takes an AP class. Students within an AP class, some of them will choose to take a test for college credit based on that subject of the AP class. Again, not every student in the AP class even does that. We'll continue to bill the fee for that test. That's an outside, service or charge that we have to incur. But again, that's only a small subset of a particular grade or a particular class that we don't feel like that's something we can absorb. But again, hopefully you understand sort of the gist of what we're trying to do, but something that applies, universally. We are going to make an attempt to try to incorporate that all into, next year's budget as opposed to billing separately for that. Next year's budget does include fundraising of about $375,000. I guess the big point to make there is tuition does not cover the full cost to educate your child or my child here at WCS. We look at this number, every year and kind of evaluate how big it is in relation to our overall operating budget. We don't want the fundraising number to cover operating expenses to get too high, because that puts us, as an institution at risk in a short-term scenario where, the economy shifts and our fundraising is just not as robust as maybe it otherwise might be, and then we have to fund operations through, other means. Next year at $375,000, this is about 4% of our operating expenses. That is a pretty healthy ratio, based on our benchmarking. I've mentioned ISM here, where I'll say it this way, we're covering operating expenses 4% from fundraising, which means 96% of operating expenses would be covered through our tuition and things that we bill. That is a healthy spot to be in from ISM standpoint, where we're at 95, 96% coverage. Best practice would say we need to be at 100% coverage of operating expenses. That is a goal that the board set as part of our last strategic plan. We've made a lot of progress on that, where we're up, above 95% and 96% for next year. Still have a little bit further to go. But again, it is a number that we just don't want it to get too large in any given year. We certainly don't want to be in a scenario where we need to cover something like 10% of our operating expenses through fundraising. At this budget level, we'd be talking in excess of $900,000. That just feels like a lot for us as a finance team. It also just limits us in terms of what we could use fundraising for, in terms of other things, other initiatives, whether it be tuition assistance or other things that we need and want to do, as an organization. As I wrap up here, I will make the point here, just so it's clear, that what next year's budget does not include. So we have a project approved to replace our tennis courts. We have replaced a van that was in desperate need of being replaced. And we've made some expenditures on the sound equipment in the Nehemiah Center. Thankfully, all of those projects have been funded by very generous donors. And we're very grateful for that. But those costs and those expenses are not incorporated into, next year's budget. So said another way, we're not going to be using tuition dollars next year to fund those 3 projects. So I've had that question bubble up to me before this meeting. I just wanted to state that here so that it's clear. So at the end of the day, there's a very small surplus, and what we saw in the packet. In my view, it's kind of a break-even budget that we're recommending for next year. And I am going to call up Glenn King, our Vice President, who's going to facilitate questions.
Thank you, Brent. So we're in the home stretch of our meeting here, but this is an opportunity for any of you, if you have any questions, or if you have any questions coming in from our people who are playing our at-home game. Anything from the home?
Yeah, so there are a couple of questions. The first one is, can you provide some clarification on question 4 that's on the ballot, and what the previous bylaw was versus the new bylaw?
And could you repeat that question into the mic?
So somebody would like clarification on question 4. Erica, can you help with that?
I mean, I can give, do you want me to read the bylaw, or?
Yeah.
I'm going to give a paraphrase while I work on getting the bylaw. Basically, it stated it was 12 meetings per year. It was a monthly meeting was the previous bylaw. I could pull it up. Sarah, are you looking at it right now? Because she's very fast in the bylaws.
All right.
I got strict instructions from Steve that we have to be right here.
Sorry. All right, so currently the bylaws read, during the academic year, the board shall meet at least once a month, and a representative of the board shall visit the school each month and report at the monthly board meeting. So it's the once a month piece.
Once a month piece. And we, a few years ago, discussed the monthly visits to and that bylaw really came into place when the Board of Trustees, and I think Lee Goddard had talked about this a few years back, operated as the administrators of the school, where the trustees were acting like the principals and the Board of Trustees were acting like, so it shifted, and now we have a line of administrators at our school that we didn't have when these bylaws were created, which was why people like myself who are dental hygienists were going to evaluate teachers, which doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So that's sort of an antiquated model. And many of us are around the school in many ways and in many capacities. So without an official visit and a clipboard into a teacher's classroom evaluating a teacher, there are true administrators with passion for education and evaluating teachers. So that's that.
There's a second question. There's a question of asking for clarification. This might be our finance team about the additional fees that are being absorbed. So, for example, will additional activity fees or supply fees that are charged beyond tuition be covered by that? And is there a little bit of a breakdown of that?
So we will be eliminating, first of all, we'll be eliminating supply lists. So when you go out in the summer and have to buy, you're given a supply list for classes, that is gone. So all of the supplies will be provided by the school for your students. So as he was talking about purple folders, all of those things are now included in your tuition. Activity fees, so the field trip fee that was charged in the elementary school, the activity fee, that is now absorbed into the budget. Middle school retreat, what are some of the other things? So those bigger items that you were paying for individually will now all be included in your tuition.
Can you give an example of one that wouldn't be covered?
AP exams?
Another one? Is there another one?
What is it?
Be a tech fund?
So that's our your enrollment deposit that you paid. Now it covers the tech and the facility fees that we used to charge.
Sarah, it was my question, I emailed it.
Yes.
I'm comfortable talking in front of all these people, but now I feel like I need to, so my question is, are we gonna have that initial, like, beginning of the year extra charge? So it's not really part of tuition, but it's upfront and spread out. Does that make sense?
No, this is, so the
So
actual
that's
tuition
all-
rates
Yeah.
include it.
Perfect.
There will not be an additional charge that says
Yeah.
supplies and activities,
Or
because
whatever.
that sort of defeats the purpose.
That's what
Yes.
I wanted to make sure.
Yes.
You can also give another example, but.
All right. Any other questions? Any more from home? All right. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Johnson, who will close us in prayer.
So I want to close this in prayer, but before I do that, I just want to cover some logistics. If you didn't catch this earlier, we are doing our voting via online. If you are a society member, we want you to vote, please. This is not Chicago, where Kelly and I lived for 20 years, where we want you to vote early and often. We just want you to vote once. But if you're a society member, we want you to vote. So can we go back to, so there's actually a QR code that's up here if you've got your mobile device and you want to scan this. Or if you want to go to this URL, that's the tinyurl.com/WCS 2024 vote. We're going to leave the voting open for a period of time after the meeting, but then we're going to close it. What we're looking for is for you to vote on those 4 items. The key items are on the minutes from last year. That's a confirmation. It's just a basic thing that we need to do as a society. The second thing we want you to vote on is the slate of proposed board members. So we're not asking you to vote on individual ones. We're asking you to vote yes or no on the entire slate. And then the third thing is the budget. So what we got covered from Brent, that $9.3 million budget, we're asking you to vote on that. And then the bylaw change, which is the minimum of 1 meeting per month for the school year, reduced down to 6 meetings a month. It's not as many, the difference isn't as big as it sounds like because it's during the school year. It's just looking for a way to allow for the board to stay engaged, but we have a ton of committees that are meeting and very engaged and not pulling out of things. We also have a strong administrative team, and so we're trying to allow the board to focus on sort of big picture, long-term strategic things, and that's what that vote is about. So we're asking each and every one of you who are society members, parenthetically, if you don't know if you're a society member or not, please ask board members or Dawn or Sarah or any other admin team that we've got here. Please ask them about that because we want as many people to be part of the society as possible. So that's a great follow-up. If you do not know, please ask us about that. Okay, so this vote is open. We're looking for people to vote. And then we'll close this out not shortly after the meeting tonight, but tonight we'll close that out, and then we'll do a count. We're asking you to vote once. You put in your email address. You vote on the 4 things. It's very straightforward. If you vote twice, we will take the second vote away, but we're just trying to go through to make sure that we've confirmed that you're part of society. So again, if you're not a society member, please ask. We definitely want to talk to you about that. All right, that said, those logistics out of the way. Would you join me as we pray and close our time tonight? Lord Jesus, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here as people of not necessarily exactly uniform thinking, but a unified mind. That we want students who are growing up to know about this world that you created, to be excited about investigating every nook and cranny of your creation, because we think that reflects you, who you are, and the desire that you have to be in relationship with your creation. And Lord, we ask that you would honor that. We are thankful for the blessings that you've poured out on us over the last 99 years, and looking forward to ongoing blessings, Lord, as we continue to look for your direction, your guidance, your wisdom, as we continue to endeavor to bring up students in a desire or in the image of Jesus, Lord. So as we go our separate ways,
We ask that you would give us a chance to rest and relax and to think about the things we've talked about, to be excited about the things that we can see that are happening here at WCS, and to be looking forward to a chance to talk more about what more we can do together as this society, as this group of people who are like-minded. Lord, we ask that we would see that happen in the hearts and minds of students here at WCS, in their neighborhoods, but not just in their immediate surroundings, but as they go out, as they graduate, as they move on to new things throughout their neighborhoods, their region that they live in, the state they live in, the country they live in, and all around the world, Lord, that your kingdom would come, that your will would be done. Lord, we ask this in the name of Christ. Amen. Amen. You are dismissed.